My husband kicked me out of our penthouse with only a torn duffel bag and handed every asset we built together to his mistress. I thought he destroyed my life completely. Until a faded debit card, my father left me a card I believed had $0, made the bank manager turn pale and whisper, "Ma'am, you need to step into my office." That moment changed everything. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Because this story isn't just about revenge. It's about rebuilding an entire empire from ashes. Are you ready? Let's dive in. My husband kicked me out of our penthouse with nothing but a torn duffel bag, and the sound of the lobby doors closing behind me still echoes in my ears whenever I close my eyes. I remember the Atlanta heat swallowing me whole, thick and humid, like even the air itself was ashamed of me. Just yesterday, I was a wife returning home, after 2 weeks caring for my sick mother, exhausted but proud, thinking of slipping back into my luxury penthouse and into the arms of the man I had devoted a decade of my life to. And then, in a single moment, the ground beneath me vanished. The key fob that had always blinked green, blinked red twice. Quincy opened the door wearing a silk robe, a fresh lipstick stain on his neck, and behind him stood Inaya, the Instagram girl, half my age, wrapped in my anniversary robe like she owned it. The shock was so total my body forgot how to breathe. He didn't invite me in. He didn't explain. He didn't even look embarrassed. He just blocked the doorway like I was an Amazon package he didn't order. And when Inaya leaned over his shoulder, smirking at my travel-worn clothes and messy hair, calling me the ex-wife, something in me cracked. Quincy made me ride the elevator down to the lobby with him, silent, cold, the scent of her expensive perfume still clinging to his robe. He dragged me to a corner like he wanted to hide me, then told me everything was over with the same tone someone uses to cancel a gym membership. 10 years erased in 10 seconds. And when I dared to question him why my key didn't work, why a stranger was wearing my robe, why he looked at me like I was a burden he'd carried for too long, he laughed. Actually laughed. Like I was stupid for not seeing it sooner. He called me unkempt, said I wasn't on his level anymore, that while I was in Alabama caring for my mother, I had forgotten my duties. The cruelty of it hollowed me out. And when security dragged me out past the doorman and the cluster of residents pretending not to stare, I felt myself shrinking right in front of them, falling out of my own life, becoming a ghost. Outside the Sovereign's glass doors, the heat slapped me again, as if it wanted to make sure I felt the humiliation fully. Quincy tossed me a duffel bag filled with old clothes and a brown envelope stuffed with divorce papers, and then he simply turned away, as if I was nothing, as if I had always been nothing. For a moment I stood there, numb, unable to process anything except the roaring in my ears. When my legs finally moved, I walked without direction, just trying to put distance between myself and the life that had just rejected me. The Atlanta skyline glimmered in the dusk like the world was celebrating, but my chest felt like it had caved in. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a home. I didn't even have enough dignity left to cry. I walked until Centennial Olympic Park appeared like a blurry memory. I sat on a cold bench, clutching that pathetic duffel bag, watching people laugh and walk and live their real lives, and I felt invisible, absorbing the truth. I had nowhere to go. I couldn't tell Mom not when she had just gotten out of the hospital. I couldn't go to a friend, they all lived in Quincy's world. I reached into the bag and pulled out my wallet. $10. 10. I opened our joint banking app. 0. Every dollar I had before marriage? Gone. My breath hitched in my throat. I checked again. 0. Quincy had drained everything, completely. That was when the despair became something physical, something sharp, pushing into my ribs. My stomach growled loud enough to embarrass me, but the restaurants around me smelled like a world I no longer belonged to. Barbecue ribs, catfish, waffles. It all tormented me. I pulled the contents of my wallet onto my lap, hoping I had overlooked a forgotten bill, a receipt with cash back, a miracle. But instead, I found something stranger. A faded photo of my father, and behind it, a card. A worn-out, peeling blue debit card from a small regional bank I hadn't thought about since I was 17. The card he gave me when I left for college. "Only use this if your ship is sinking, baby girl," he had told me with that warm, steady smile. "If the world tries to drown you, this will keep you afloat." I had forgotten about it. For a moment, I stared at the card like it was an illusion. I told myself it had maybe $20. 50, if childhood had been kind. But tonight I had nothing left. My ship wasn't just sinking, it had already sunk. So I held onto that card, like it was the last piece of driftwood in an ocean, whispering to myself in the dark, "Please, please, let there be something." And I waited for morning, curled under the awning of a closed shop, clinging to a duffel bag filled with old clothes and a hope so fragile it barely counted as hope at all. By the time the sun rose over downtown Atlanta, my body felt like it had been carved out of exhaustion and fear, held together only by the thin plastic of the worn-out debit card clenched in my fist. I walked toward the Heritage Trust of the South Branch, as if drawn by some invisible instinct, the kind that only appears when you have absolutely nothing left to lose. The small stone building looked like it had been forgotten by time, overshadowed by the towering glass banks Quincy loved to brag about. The brass handle was cool in my hand when I entered, and the quiet hush of the room felt almost sacred compared to the chaos of my last 24 hours. Only 2 tellers, 1 young customer service guy, beige walls, old carpet, a place that didn't pretend to be more than it was. Somehow that made me trust it even more. "Good morning, ma'am," Kofi said, straightening in his chair when he noticed my disheveled clothes and tired eyes. He didn't judge, maybe because this bank saw more real people than the fancy ones ever did. "How can I help you today?" My voice cracked when I tried to speak. I need to check the balance on this card, but it's very old. I don't remember the PIN." I handed him the faded blue card, the edges peeling like a relic dug out of the earth. Kofi raised his brows. "Whoa, this is ancient. I've only ever seen photos of this logo in training materials." My stomach tightened. "Can it still work?" "Let's find out," he said kindly. He took my ID, Zalika Okofor, typed the name in. The computer hummed, lines of code blinked, then Kofi frowned, deeply. "That's strange," he murmured. The hairs on the back of my neck lifted. "What's wrong?" "It's not showing the balance," he said slowly. "But it's flagged." The word sliced through me like a cold blade. "Flagged? For what? Debt?" "No," he said quickly, shaking his head. "This isn't a debt flag. I've never seen this code before." He typed faster, lips pressed together, eyes narrowing. "Let me check the manual server." I watched the crippled legacy system blink in green text on black background, like a fossil from the early internet age. The room felt too quiet, too still. Then suddenly Kofi froze, not the gentle pause of confusion, but the absolute stillness of someone seeing something impossible. His eyes went wide, his throat bobbed as he swallowed. He pushed his chair back so fast it screeched across the floor. "Mr. Zuberi," he called out sharply. The branch manager, a tall, stern black man in his 50s, stepped out of his office, irritation on his face. "Kofi, what did I tell you about shouting?" "Sir," Kofi said, voice trembling. "You need to see this. Right now." Annoyed, Mr. Zuberi walked over, expecting a rookie mistake. Then he glanced at the screen, and everything about him changed. His face drained of color, his posture straightened, his eyebrows knit together as if he couldn't trust what he was seeing. He looked at me, then back at the screen, then at me again. "Ma'am," he said, his voice suddenly formal, almost reverent. "You are Mrs. Zalika Okafor, correct?" "Yes," I whispered. "Is something wrong? Did he owe something?" "No," he said softly. "Far from it." He snapped into action immediately. "Kofi, lock the doors, put the closed sign up. Now, no one else sees this screen." My heart dropped into my stomach. Within seconds, the blinds were shut, the room sealed, and I was being ushered into the branch manager's office like someone under witness protection. The door clicked behind us. Mr. Zuberi sat across from me, folding his hands while trying and failing to hide how shaken he was. "Mrs. Okafor," he began carefully, "your father was not who he appeared to be." Confusion washed over me. He was a tobacco salesman. That was only one part of his life. He turned the monitor toward me. Instead of a balance screen, I saw an ownership diagram. Corporate filings, asset lists, multiple entities. And at the top, Okafor Legacy Holdings LLC. My breath caught. "Your father founded this company in 1998, Mr. Zuberi said. He placed more than 2,000 acres of pecan groves, farmland, and minority corporate shares under its ownership." My head spun. "That's impossible. My father didn't have that kind of money." "Ma'am," he said gently, "your father was a land broker, a brilliant one, and he hid his wealth deliberately." He clicked another tab. "This account was designed with something called a desperate clause. It activates only when the heir attempts access while having a zero personal balance. Only then does the company become legally accessible to you." My throat tightened. He designed it because he knew someone might hurt me financially? "It appears," Mr. Zuberi said, that your father predicted everything. My eyes burned, my pulse hammered. Then he opened a drawer and pulled out a thick, yellowed envelope. Your father left this for you, to be opened only after account activation. My hands shook as I opened the flap, unfolding the letter inside. The first line made my breath hitch. To my baby girl. I wiped my eyes and kept reading his warnings about unfairness, about choosing the wrong man, about protecting myself from the cruelty of others. Build your own kingdom, my child, he wrote. Make them regret underestimating you. Papa's anchor has been dropped. Now sail. When I finished, I didn't cry. I didn't crumble. Something inside me hardened and crystallized, something sharp, something cold, something powerful. Mr. Zuberi, I said steadily, voice no longer trembling. What do I need to do to activate everything? Technically, he replied, you already have. The legal team will follow your instructions. My next words came out with a clarity that surprised even me. Good. Then here's what I need. Cash, a secure hotel under a new identity, all files on Okafor Legacy Holdings, and a recommendation for the best restructuring consultant in Midtown. Mr. Zuberi exhaled slowly, studying the new steel in my voice. I know someone, he said. They call him the cleaner. Perfect, I whispered. Book him, today. I walked out of the bank with a manila folder pressed against my chest like it was a new ribcage keeping me alive, the sunlight hitting me differently than it had yesterday. Yesterday I had been a woman stripped of everything. Today I was a woman holding a secret that could rewrite the entire trajectory of my life. The world still looked the same. Atlanta traffic still roared, the heat still clung to my skin. The sidewalk still buzzed with people who didn't know my name, but inside me something enormous had shifted. I found a quiet alley behind a coffee shop and opened the folder again just to make sure it was real. The words were still there, 2,000 acres, multiple corporate shares, dormant LLC, air activation. I whispered to myself, Papa, what did you build? And more importantly, what did you think I would face that made you prepare all this? I didn't have time to fall apart again, not now. Not when the ground had finally appeared beneath my feet. I used the cash Mr. Zuberi handed me to buy a new phone at a kiosk, one with a new number fresh, clean, untainted by Quincy's existence. The old one I powered off and shoved deep into my duffel bag. Let him text whatever threats or fake apologies he wanted. That life was dead. As soon as I walked out of the phone store, I ordered a Lyft and headed straight to a department store. I needed clothes that didn't scream, woman who slept outside last night. I bought simple things, black slacks, a white blouse, a cardigan, and changed in the restroom. The woman who stared back in the mirror still had puffy eyes and messy hair, but she also had a steadiness that hadn't been there before. She looked like someone preparing for a war no one else could see. By the time I checked into the street, Regis under a false name, exhaustion punched me so hard I nearly collapsed onto the lush carpeted floor of the suite. I locked the door twice, drew all the curtains shut, and let myself breathe for the first time in 24 hours. Then I went straight to the bathroom, turned on the steaming water, and stepped under it fully clothed, letting the hot stream wash away every trace of what Quincy and Inaya did to me, every cruel word, every lie, every humiliation. I peeled off the wet clothes slowly, almost ceremonially, and stood under the shower until my skin burned and the sound of the water drowned out my thoughts. After drying off, I ordered the longest room service meal of my life and devoured it with the hunger of someone who had forgotten what real food tasted like. When the last bite was gone, I fell into the soft, heavy hotel bed and slept the kind of sleep that drags you under like an undertow. No dreams, no nightmares, just darkness. When I woke up the next morning, there was only one thing in my mind. I needed to meet the cleaner. The Midtown skyline glittered like a promise as my car pulled up to the towering glass building where he worked. Inside, everything was sharp lines, steel, marble, Quincy's fantasy aesthetic, but now I saw it with new eyes. Not as something I needed to fit into, but as something I needed to conquer. The receptionist looked up politely. Do you have an appointment with Mr. Sekou? No, I said, but tell him this. The daughter of Tendai Okafor is here, owner of Okafor Legacy Holdings, 2,000 acres. Her expression flickered, a crack in her professional veneer. She picked up the phone. Less than 5 minutes later, she said, Mr. Sekou will see you now. The elevator ride to the top floor felt like ascending into another universe. His office was minimalist, dark wood, panoramic view, nothing unnecessary. And the man behind the desk matched it perfectly. Early 30s, sharp gaze, calm posture, expression unreadable. He didn't stand to greet me. He simply looked at me, assessing every detail. "You have 10 minutes," he said. "Tell me why you're here." I sat without being invited. My father left me a dormant company, 2,000 acres of pecan groves in South Georgia, holdings in multiple agribusiness chains, a legacy trust, and I know nothing about running any of it. He raised a brow but didn't interrupt. "My husband kicked me out yesterday," I continued, my voice steady. "Took everything, emptied all our accounts, left me homeless. And now he's chasing the same land I inherited. He wants to build a luxury development on it, and he thinks I'm gone." "But you're not," Sekou said. "No," I replied. "I'm here, and I need to learn. Fast. I need you to restructure everything from the ground up, create a modern, profitable corporate entity, and teach me how to wield it." He studied me for a long moment. "I'm expensive," he said quietly. "Good," I replied. "I'm no longer afraid of expensive." He leaned back, eyes narrowing. "I don't deal with people chasing emotional revenge." "I'm not chasing revenge," I said. "I'm building power. The drama is just leftover debris." For the first time, the corner of his mouth lifted into something like a smile. "Fine," he said. "We start now." His 10 minutes stretched into hours. The two of us spread documents across the table, diving into every corner of my father's legacy. The numbers were bigger than anything I had ever imagined owning. The opportunities were larger than anything I had ever dared to dream. But the weight of responsibility didn't scare me, not anymore. By late afternoon, Sekou stood from his chair. "I need my team," he said. "And you'll need a base of operations, not a hotel." I nodded. "Where?" "I'll find you something," he replied. "Something fitting." And he did. That evening, as the sun painted Atlanta gold, I stepped into a historic mansion in Cascade Heights, an estate once owned by an old black philanthropic family. Solid, reputable, powerful, bought in cash. Mine. I stood in the foyer, marble cool beneath my feet, and whispered to myself, "This is where I rebuild. This time, not as Quincy's wife, not as the woman crying in the lobby, but as the daughter of Tendai Okofor, as a CEO, as my father's legacy come to life." The mansion felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. After Sekou left to assemble his team, I walked through every hallway slowly, touching the polished banisters, the framed architectural prints on the walls, the velvet curtains heavy with dust from decades of silence. This house had history, weight, and a presence that demanded respect, something Quincy had never known how to give. I stood in the middle of the grand foyer and whispered, "Papa, you really prepared all of this for me, didn't you?" Not in words, but in the echo of the high ceilings, I felt something answering back. "You are responsible now, don't waste it." By the next morning, the mansion no longer felt empty. Sekou arrived with 5 people, an accountant, a land attorney, an agribusiness strategist, a tax expert, and a silent young man with a laptop who looked like he could hack into the Pentagon without blinking. They moved like a unit, efficient, precise, emotionless. Exactly the opposite of the chaos Quincy used to operate in. Papers spread across the long mahogany table, maps of Georgia unfolded, screens lit up with spreadsheets, projections, recorded deeds, land zoning laws, and market evaluations. All morning, I listened more than I spoke. Every sentence felt heavy, technical, overwhelming, but Sekou watched me with an expression that said, "Absorb this, you'll need every piece later." By midday, he called for a break. "Come with me," he said, motioning toward the back entrance. We stepped outside into the bright Georgia Sunday. The air smelled like pine and freshly cut grass. "Zalika," he said, crossing his arms as he surveyed the yard, "I need to ask you something before we go any further. Are you ready to run this? This isn't just land or money. This is an empire disguised as farmland. Once we activate it fully, your life will never go back to quiet." "Quiet?" I laughed softly. "My life hasn't been quiet since the day I married Quincy." He nodded once. "Good, because once you step into this, you can't step out, not without burning." I met his eyes. "I'm already burning. I might as well set the fire myself." That answer must have satisfied him. By the afternoon, we were back inside, reviewing the dormant corporate structure my father created. The more I learned, the more I realized he was ahead of his time, a visionary hidden behind overalls and the smell of tobacco leaves. He had prepared a defensive mechanism, a shield that would activate only when I was at my lowest. I had always thought my softness was a weakness, but Papa must have known softness can coexist with steel. You just have to know when to switch. Hours passed. I felt my brain stretching, absorbing, creating new pathways as if I had lived in this world all along. Around 6 p.m., the team left, and the mansion fell silent again. I made myself coffee and sat by the tall window overlooking the lawn. It was the first time all day I allowed my thoughts to drift to Quincy, how he threw me out like spoiled milk, how he let another woman wear my robe, how his eyes turned cold the second he decided I was useless to him. And I remembered the laughter in the lobby. A woman thinking she won. A man thinking he upgraded. My stomach tightened not with pain, but with clarity. They had taken everything from me. But today, I learned something else. They took nothing I couldn't rebuild, and they kept nothing I couldn't take back. My new phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Zal, can we talk, Quincy? Of course he kept my old number saved somewhere, hoping I'd respond like before, soft, forgiving, stupid. I blocked him. Then I blocked him again on social media just to feel the satisfaction twice. I went to bed early, but sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the lobby again. The way security dragged me out, the whispers, the humiliation. But instead of reopening old wounds, each memory sharpened my focus. These weren't wounds anymore, these were weapons. At dawn, I was already dressed, hair pulled back, eyes tired but determined. Sekou arrived right on time. Big day, he said. Are you ready? More than ready, I answered. We started with the land inventory again, parcel by parcel, section by section. He explained what each area could become: high-value pecan processing facilities, renewable irrigation systems, possible leasing opportunities, even potential partnerships with universities. With every new possibility, a vision grew in my mind. A kingdom, yes, but not Quincy's kingdom, a monument to greed, ego, and lies. Mine would be different. My father's land would not become a playground for Quincy's vanity. It would become a foundation, an engine, a legacy with roots far deeper than his shallow ambition. By noon, Sekou closed the final file. Now, he said, we get to the part you'll like. He slid a stack of papers toward me: Quincy's recent business activity, investor meetings, debt patterns, and whispers circulating the industry. He's desperate, Sekou said. He thinks he's about to secure the biggest project of his life. He has no idea the land he's chasing is yours. My lips parted slowly, almost involuntarily. Not in surprise, no. I had expected this, but in something closer to satisfaction. He's building his entire future, Sekou continued, on land he doesn't know, he can never touch. The idea sank into my bones. Quincy thought he won. Quincy thought his future was bright. Quincy thought I was gone. I leaned back in my chair, the leather cold against my spine, and whispered, let him dream a little longer. Sekou watched me quietly. You're not the same woman I saw yesterday at the bank, he said. Yesterday, you were surviving. Today, you're calculating. Is that a bad thing? I asked. No, he said. It's the beginning of power. I turned toward the window again, the mansion, the acres beyond, the folder still sitting on the table like a silent promise. Everything my father built was now in my hands. Everything Quincy stole was within my reach. Everything I lost yesterday was becoming fuel today. And finally, for the first time since the nightmare began, I smiled. Not the smile Quincy used to take advantage of. Not the polite smile I gave society. A new smile. Sharp, quiet, dangerous. The kind of smile a woman makes when she's no longer a victim. The kind of smile a woman makes when she's about to rewrite the story on her terms. The kind of smile Quincy would never forget. For the next 2 days, the mansion became a war room. Maps, spreadsheets, timelines, legal files, everything spread across the mahogany table, like the blueprint of an empire rising from ashes. I barely slept, but the exhaustion felt purposeful, almost exhilarating. Every time I felt my eyelids grow heavy, I remembered Quincy pushing me out of the lobby, the way his voice echoed with triumph as he said, "You came into this marriage with nothing. You leave with nothing." I repeated those words in my head until they no longer wounded me. They fueled me. On the third morning, Sekou arrived early, crisp and composed as always, holding a tablet with new data. "Your father wasn't just a land broker," he said without preamble. "He was a strategist. And he left you hidden leverage you haven't even touched yet." He tapped the screen. I leaned closer. Corporate shares, agricultural patents, minority stakes in companies that had grown exponentially. "Your holdings aren't just land, Salika. They're influence. Influence. A word Quincy never allowed me near. He used to say, "Business is too complicated, baby. Stay in your lane." My lane. Cooking, hosting dinners, smiling politely, being convenient, being quiet. But now, the world was opening itself to me in a way it never had, and I felt my father's presence in every discovery, like he had known Quincy would come one day, like he had built a fortress around me long before I ever knew I'd need one. "What do we do with all this?" I asked. "We reorganize," Sekou replied. "And then we leverage." Quietly. That afternoon, Sekou's team transformed my father's dormant LLC into a functioning, modern corporate machine. We filed new structures, activated trusts, opened new subsidiaries, and established shell companies discreet, powerful, invisible. Quincy would have no idea what storm was gathering at the edges of his world. By evening, the mansion hummed with the energy of transformation. I walked to the kitchen to make tea, needing a moment to breathe. But as I reached for the sugar, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Another message I didn't want to see. "Zal, please. I'm worried about you. Can we talk?" Quincy. The same man who didn't care enough to ask where I slept the night he threw me out. I deleted the message without reading it twice, then blocked the number. Again. I returned to the study where Sekou was reviewing documents. "He's trying to contact you?" he asked without looking up. "Yes." "Good," Sekou said. "It means he's starting to feel pressure somewhere. Probably financially." I blinked. "Already?" Sekou nodded. When arrogant men make reckless decisions, consequences arrive faster than expected. A small laugh escaped me. It wasn't joyful. It was recognition. The next morning, we reviewed Quincy's company's structure deeper, peeling layers like an onion, only every layer smelled worse. "He's over-leveraged," Sekou said, pointing at a red line in the spreadsheet. "Living on borrowed reputation. His assets aren't real, his confidence is." "Sounds exactly like him," I murmured. But then something caught my eye. "Wait," I said. "What's this meeting?" Sekou turned the screen to face me. "Quincy is scheduled to present a development proposal next week. A huge one, a multi-million-dollar project on land in South Georgia." I stared at the map. "My land? He doesn't know it's mine." "Not yet," Sekou confirmed. A thrill, something dark and electric, ran through me. Fate was aligning more perfectly than I could ever script. "Let him move forward," I said quietly. "Let him get excited, prepared. Let him believe he finally has his victory." Sekou looked at me for a moment, then smiled, slow and approving. "You're learning." Over the next few days, we built the foundation of a strategy that was part business execution, part psychological warfare. Not petty revenge. No, something sharper. A lesson. Quincy had always believed he was the architect of my life. Now he'd learn he was only a side note in my story, and I was the one holding the blueprints. On the 5th evening, we took a break. Sekou insisted I step outside, breathe fresh air, touch real earth. "Because you can't lead land without touching soil," he said. So I stepped into the backyard, barefoot in the cool grass. The sky was purple and gold, and fireflies hovered like floating embers. The world was quiet again, but this time, the quiet didn't scare me. It grounded me. I whispered to the night sky, "Papa, I know what I have to do now." When I returned inside, Sekou was standing at the foot of the staircase, arms folded, watching me with a thoughtful expression. "Zalika," he said slowly, "you've changed more in a week than most people change in a lifetime." I took a deep breath. When someone destroys your life, you either lie down and die, or you rise into someone they never saw coming. His eyes held mine. There was no pity there, no doubt, only acknowledgement. "So," he said, "are you ready for the next step?" "What step?" "We send a message. To Quincy, to Atlanta." A shiver rolled through me, not fear, but anticipation. "What kind of message?" Sekou stepped closer, the kind that makes people whisper your name before Quincy even realizes he should be afraid. I didn't look away. "Then let's begin." That night, alone in my room, I couldn't sleep. Not from fear, from purpose. My heart beat steady and calm, like a drum calling an army forward. I was ready, truly ready. Quincy had taken everything from me. Now it was my turn, and I wasn't coming to take it back. I was coming to take more. By the end of the week, Atlanta had begun to whisper, quietly, carefully. The same way people whisper when they sense a shift in the air like a storm about to break. But Quincy heard none of it. He was too busy rehearsing his presentation in front of his bathroom mirror, smoothing his suit, practicing the confident smile he had always used to mask the cracks in his empire. Meanwhile, in the mansion at Cascade Heights, my war room filled with new ammunition. Sekou's team uncovered even more. Small contractors Quincy owed, unpaid invoices, a document trail so sloppy it was practically a confession. "He has enemies everywhere," Sekou said one morning as the team reviewed the findings. Suppliers he underpaid, workers he cheated, communities he ignored. He built his entire company on exploitation. And now? I asked. Now, Sekou replied. Those people finally have someone with the power to listen. I didn't answer, but something settled inside me. For 10 years, Quincy's voice had been the loudest in my life. Now his silence was about to be even louder. Later that afternoon, Sekou placed a thick binder in front of me. This, he said, is the next phase. I opened it. Inside were profiles, names, stories, recorded complaints, financial reports. Every person Quincy had stepped on to climb. Why are you showing me this? I asked, though I already felt the answer forming. Because philanthropy is not just kindness, Sekou said quietly. It is strategy, influence, reputation, power. I stared at the binder. You want me to help them? No, he corrected. I want you to empower them, help them rise. And when they rise, Quincy falls. A slow breath escaped me. Not revenge out of spite, revenge through elevation. A different kind of justice. We start tomorrow, I said. And we did. The next morning, we drove to South Georgia past highways, open fields, and long stretches of pecan groves that seemed to breathe under the sunlight. My father's land. My land. The soil was dark and rich, the trees old and proud, and the workers who met us looked at me with curiosity at first, then quiet respect when Sekou introduced me. This is Miss Salika, he said, the new owner. I felt my throat tighten. Owner, but no heir, guardian. I spent the entire day talking with workers, listening to their problems, low wages, failing machinery, unpredictable harvest seasons, old equipment that needed upgrades. They expected pity. What they got instead was commitment. I'm raising wages, I said. Effective immediately. They froze. I continued. I'm modernizing equipment. We're building housing, a school, a clinic. You will not be invisible anymore. One by one, their expressions shifted from confusion to disbelief, to hope, real hope. When I returned to the mansion that evening, dusty and tired, Sekou nodded in approval. You did well. It felt right, I whispered. He handed me a cold bottle of water. It was right. The next few days blurred into movement, construction, inspections, legal filings, meetings, planning. But beneath all of it, a sense of rising momentum pulsed like a heartbeat. And soon, it rippled into Atlanta. Quincy noticed it first not through business channels, but through gossip. At an upscale lounge one night, while bragging to investors about his upcoming project, he overheard two businessmen whispering. You hear about that new player? Okafor Holdings, right? Yeah. People say they're buying debt, paying small suppliers, building something. Quincy stiffened. The name hit him like a slap. Okafor? He forced a laugh. Never heard of them, but his hands were sweating. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Sekou spread a new document across the table, an economic impact plan. This is how you enter the Atlanta market officially, he said. This will put your name on the map. My eyes drifted to the headline. Okafor Legacy Initiative, empowering Southern communities through sustainable development. This isn't just strategy, I said softly. This is my father's dream, Sekou nodded. And you're the one making it real. That night, after the team left, I sat alone in the mansion's library, staring at the columns of numbers, the schedules, the land maps. I ran my fingers along the grain of the wooden table. Papa, I whispered, I'm building it, just like you wanted. A sudden knock jolted me. I stood slowly. Sekou never knocked, he messaged. The staff never visited this late. My heart tightened. Then another knock. Soft, familiar. No, it couldn't be. I walked to the door, each step slow, controlled. I opened it. Quincy stood there, rumpled suit, red eyes, crushed ego, like a king dethroned and thrown onto the street. Zal, he breathed. Please, I need to talk to you. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I only stared. And he crumbled. Everything's falling apart, he whispered. I need your help. His voice, once smug, commanding, was now small, desperate. The exact tone he used when he wanted something. Not me. Something from me. Please, he whispered again. Let me in. Finally I spoke. Calm, even, cold. No. He flinched. Zal, please. You let me sleep on the street, I said. You threw me out like I was trash. You let her wear my robe. You let security drag me away. His breath hitched. I wasn't thinking straight. You were very clear, I interrupted. Crystal. He swallowed hard. Zal, I need you. No, I repeated. You need saving. His eyes widened, a flicker of anger behind the desperation. You think you're better than me now? I held his gaze, steady and unblinking. I don't think, Quincy. I stepped back and began closing the door. I know. And I shut it in his face. His muffled voice pleaded on the other side, but I walked away, each step grounding me deeper in my father's legacy, in my new power, in the future I was building, not as Quincy's wife, not as the woman he discarded, but as something far stronger, something he could never control again. Tomorrow, the real game would begin. The morning after Quincy showed up at the mansion, I expected guilt to creep in, some lingering ache from the years I'd spent loving him. But when I woke up, the sun warmed through the curtains. The only feeling I had was clarity, a sharpened sense of direction. Quincy's desperation was confirmation. The pressure was working. The empire he built on lies was beginning to crack. And this time, I wasn't the one holding it together. Sekou arrived early as usual, tablet in hand, expression unreadable. He came here last night, he said, not a question he already knew. Yes, I replied. And? I sent him away. A faint nod, approval. Good. If he's coming to you, it means the financial leaks are spreading faster than we expected. How bad is it for him? I asked. Sekou swiped across his tablet, displaying a series of red numbers and downward graphs. Bad, he said. Investors are pulling out. Suppliers won't extend credit. His accounts are nearly empty. And, he turned the screen toward me. His mistress is draining what's left. I raised an eyebrow. Inaya? She's using his cards like they have no limit, Sekou said. And he can't stop her without shutting down his entire lifestyle. I didn't have to imagine the panic Quincy was drowning in. The man relied on appearance more than reality. Without money, he wasn't Quincy. He was just another man pretending. Good, I said. Let him keep pretending. The fall will be harder. Sekou smiled slightly. Then you'll enjoy today's meeting. Meeting? With your new allies. I didn't know what he meant until I walked into the war room. There, seated around the table, were faces I'd never seen but immediately recognized from the stories and files we'd studied. The small suppliers Quincy owed money, the men and women he had manipulated, underpaid, ignored, and exploited. They looked nervous walking into a mansion like this, like they didn't believe they belonged in a place with marble floors and oil paintings older than Atlanta itself. But they did. This was their victory as much as mine. Sekou introduced me. This, he said, is Miss Zulika Okofor, owner of the company that paid off your debts. They turned toward me with a mix of confusion, gratitude, and disbelief. A man with rough hands and dust, still clinging to his boots, spoke first. Ma'am, we don't know why you helped us, but thank you. Folks like us, we ain't used to being seen. I looked at him, then at the others. You weren't invisible, I said. You were ignored. There's a difference. They shifted in their seats, listened closer. My father believed in building things that last, I continued. Not buildings, people, communities, and Quincy, their faces hardened immediately at his name. Quincy tried to break all of that for his own gain. He took advantage of you because he thought you had no power. A low murmur spread through the room. But now, I said, voice steady, you do. Sekou stepped forward. Miss Zulika has a proposal. I nodded to him, then looked at the suppliers again. I want to partner with you, build something new, something that benefits the people who actually do the work. They listened, really listened, and for the next hour, I laid out the plan. New housing for their workers, modern tools, fair contracts, guaranteed payment, and opportunities for expansion. By the end of the meeting, their suspicion had turned to belief. One woman stood. Her voice cracked. Ma'am, no one has ever offered us anything but scraps. Then take your seat at the table, I said. It's where you belong. When they left, Sekou closed the war room doors. You realize what you just did? He asked. Yes, I replied. I built an army. Not just an army, Sekou corrected. A legacy. He wasn't wrong. And Quincy? He had no idea what was coming. Later that afternoon, while reviewing land zoning papers, I received a call from a blocked number. I ignored it. It called again and again. Finally, I answered. Zal. Quincy's voice was strained, frantic. Please hear me out. I didn't respond. Everything's falling apart, he said. The bank froze my account. Investors are backing out. I told you yesterday, I interrupted, voice flat. I'm not your lifeline anymore. But you don't understand, he snapped. Someone's sabotaging me. I didn't flinch. Is that so? Yes. His voice shook with anger. Someone bought all my debts. Someone's poisoning my reputation. Someone is destroying me. I let the silence stretch just long enough for him to feel it. Quincy, I said finally, you destroyed yourself. And I hung up. That evening, Sekou and I reviewed the schedule for the upcoming week: investor meetings, land inspections, project planning. But midway through the conversation, Sekou set his tablet down and studied me. What? I asked. You're too calm. I shrugged. Clarity brings calm. Clarity, he echoed, then leaned forward slightly. And something else. His gaze held mine. It was intense, probing, but not invasive. You're becoming the version of yourself you were meant to be, he said softly. Heat rose in my chest, not embarrassment, recognition. Because he was right. I wasn't becoming someone new. I was becoming the person I had been forced to bury. That night, after the team left, I walked through the mansion alone. The halls no longer felt empty. They felt expectant, like the walls themselves knew something powerful was unfolding inside them. I stopped at the front door and looked out into the quiet night. Somewhere across town, Quincy was unraveling. And tomorrow? Tomorrow, he would make the biggest mistake of his life. He would walk into a meeting believing he was about to claim a future built on land he thought belonged to strangers. He would smile. He would perform. He would sell his dream. And then he would learn the truth. I whispered into the dark, "Sleep well, Quincy. Tomorrow, you meet the real me." The morning of Quincy's big presentation arrived with a stillness that felt almost ceremonial. The sky over Atlanta was clear, sharp, almost glass-like, as if the city itself was holding its breath. I woke up before dawn, not because of nerves, but because my body had adjusted to this new rhythm. Rise early, move with purpose, stay 3 steps ahead. I dressed in a fitted charcoal suit, simple gold earrings, and pulled my hair into a sleek low bun. Powerful, precise, unshakable. When I walked downstairs, Sekou was already in the foyer, tablet in hand, wearing his usual cool expression. But when he saw me, something flickered across his face, approval, and something warmer. "You're ready," he said. "I've been ready," I replied. "Today is just confirmation." He nodded once. "Let's go." We didn't drive to our office. We drove to the skyscraper where Quincy would be giving his presentation to the investment committee, a group of wealthy developers, bankers, and officials who loved flashy promises and bigger profits. Quincy had polished his pitch for weeks, but he didn't know the land he was selling dreams about didn't belong to him, and he didn't know the woman who owned it would be sitting in the same building. Not in the audience, not hidden, the center, the power. When we arrived, the lobby buzzed with energy: men in tailored suits, women with clipboards, assistants sprinting around with iced coffees. I caught curious glances as I walked beside Sekou. People didn't recognize me, but they could sense what I had become. Power changes the air around you. It makes people notice even if they don't know why. We stepped into the executive lounge on the 48th floor, a private waiting area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Midtown. I sat down calmly, crossing my legs, while Sekou reviewed the schedule. "He presents in 20 minutes, Sekou said. "After that, the committee holds a brief closed session. And then? Then they bring in the landowner." I smiled slowly. "Perfect." Meanwhile, on the other side of the building, Quincy paced in the hallway. His suit looked perfect, but his eyes were restless, hollow. The cracks were showing. Anaya had left him after maxing out everything she could, and he had spent the last 2 nights trying to bargain with banks, beg investors, and convince himself he still had control. But control is the first thing a liar loses. And today, he was walking into a room full of people waiting to see if he had anything left to offer. He didn't. The clock struck 10. "It's time," Sekou said. We moved into a private conference room with mirrored glass. From inside, we could see the board. But they couldn't see us. Quincy entered with a fake confidence so thin it nearly cracked at the door. He shook hands aggressively, laughed too loudly, and tried to exude the dominance he no longer possessed. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, clicking his presentation remote, "thank you for giving me the opportunity to present the most ambitious development project Georgia has seen this decade." His voice echoed through the speakers into our observation room. I watched him perform, arms wide, pacing confidently, selling dreams the way he used to sell lies to me. It was strange watching him from the outside. For years, I believed he was larger than life, someone impossible to replace, a man whose approval determined my worth. But now, he looked small, desperate. A man scrambling to hold on to a world that no longer included him. "This land," Quincy continued, "is untapped potential prime acreage, ready for a luxury lifestyle community, golf course, retail spaces, and exclusive residences. I leaned forward slightly. There it is, I whispered. Sekou tapped his tablet. The committee knows the landowner is arriving. They're waiting for your entrance. Quincy spoke with the same smug confidence he used when he told me I had nothing without him. And I have already begun discussions with the landowner, who is very open to collaboration. I smiled. A slow, dark smile. Let's introduce them to the truth, I said. Sekou opened the door. The committee assistant greeted us immediately, eyes widening slightly at the aura Sekou and I walked with. Miss Okafor? Mr. Sekou? They're ready for you now. We stepped inside the boardroom. Quincy froze mid-sentence. His jaw slackened. The remote fell from his hand, hitting the carpet with a soft thud. The committee members looked between us and Quincy, confused. Sekou stood tall and calm beside me, but the room was mine the moment I walked in. Good morning, I said, my voice smooth but cold. My name is Zalika Okafor, owner of Okafor Legacy Holdings LLC, the committee murmured. Quincy's face drained of color. What Zal? What are you doing here? He stammered. I ignored him completely and turned to the committee. I understand you have been presented a proposal that relies heavily on the assumption that Mr. Quincy has access to 2,000 acres of land in South Georgia. The committee chair nodded slowly. Yes, he stated you two were in negotiations. Quincy's mouth opened. We are Zal. Tell them, we're... I raised a hand. Silence. That is false. Gasps. Pens dropped. Quincy stumbled forward. Zalika, what are you doing? This is... The land, I continued, tying my words with precision, belongs entirely to me. It is fully private, fully controlled, and inaccessible to Mr. Quincy in any form. The committee exchanged looks: surprise, irritation, interest. Quincy tried again, voice breaking. But Zal, we talked at dinner, you said... I finally turned to him, slowly, deliberately. I said nothing, I replied. You assumed. His face contorted. Anger, confusion, fear, all blending into a man who no longer recognized the woman standing before him. This project, I said, addressing the room again, will not be moving forward under Quincy Constructions. Then who? The chair asked. I smiled faintly. My company is reviewing partnerships with firms who operate with integrity. Quincy took a shaky step back. You did this to me. No, I replied calmly. You did this to yourself. The committee thanked me, dismissed Quincy, and began discussing alternative partnerships while he stood outside in the hallway trembling, humiliated, stripped of the only thing that validated him, his status. I walked past him without stopping. He grabbed my arm weakly, desperately. Zal, please. I'm begging you. I looked at his hand on my sleeve. Remove it. He let go instantly. I leaned close enough that only he could hear me. I told you the night you threw me out, you would regret it. His breath hitched. And now, I whispered, you're finally beginning to understand how regret feels. I walked away, steady, unbothered, unstoppable. And behind me, Quincy broke. The days after the presentation were strangely quiet, too quiet for a city that thrived on noise, gossip, and ambition. But beneath that calm surface, something was shifting. Atlanta's business networks buzzed privately with one name, Okafor. People asked questions in hushed tones. Who was she? Where did she come from? How did she rise so fast? No one had answers, only rumors. And rumors were enough to make the powerful nervous. Quincy, however, wasn't nervous. He was unraveling, completely. The morning after his humiliation, he woke up in Inaya's now empty apartment because she'd vanished sometime during the night, taking whatever she could pawn. His phone was filled with missed calls from creditors, emails flagged with red warnings, and one message from his lawyer: we need to talk. Urgent. He ignored all of it. Instead, he called me. Over and over, no answer. When he realized I had blocked him again, he spiraled even deeper. Meanwhile, in the Cascade Mansion, I sat at the long table reviewing blueprints with Sekou. He's collapsing faster than projected, Sekou said, tapping on his tablet. 3 investors pulled out within 24 hours. His main supplier is refusing to release materials without upfront payment. I didn't look up. Good. He also called your bank, Sekou added. Trying to get information about you. I paused. And? They didn't give him anything. Good, I repeated. Then closed the blueprint and leaned back. Let him drown in uncertainty before the real wave hits. Sekou studied me for a moment. You're not just reclaiming power, he said quietly. You're mastering it. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Later that afternoon, while reviewing corporate formation documents, my phone buzzed again, not Quincy this time, but a number from Buckhead, one I vaguely recognized. I answered. "Miss Okafor," a refined older voice said. "This is Mrs. Whitmore from the Atlanta Women of Influence Council." I stilled. The AWIC was one of the most elite networks in the city. Old money, philanthropy, political ties, and generational wealth. Women who shaped legislation, funded universities, and could elevate or bury a reputation with a single luncheon. "How may I help you?" I asked. "We'd like to invite you," she said warmly, "to our annual private forum. We hear you are undertaking a large-scale community project in South Georgia. We'd love to hear more." I felt Seku's eyes on me as I replied, "Send me the details. I'll attend." When I hung up, Seku let out a low breath. "That," he said, "is the kind of door money can't buy." "It's not money they're recognizing," I said. "It's intention." "And competence," Seku added. "Don't undersell yourself." That night, I lay awake longer than usual. Not because of stress, but because the landscape of my life was shifting faster than I could process. 1 month ago, I was a housewife walking into a penthouse that no longer wanted me. Today, I was shaping the future of entire communities, but the story wasn't finished. Not yet. The next morning, we visited the agricultural facilities in South Georgia again, this time with engineers and architects. Plans for new housing, irrigation systems, and community spaces were approved on the spot. Workers shook my hand, grateful, surprised, hopeful. "Your father would be proud," one older man told me as he wiped sweat from his brow. I swallowed hard. "I hope so." When we returned to the mansion, Seku checked his phone and stiffened. "What is it?" I asked. "You need to see this." He turned his screen toward me. It was a video. Quincy, standing outside a bar in Midtown, drunk, disheveled, yelling at someone recording him. "That woman, she ruined me," he slurred. "That witch took everything. Everything." People laughed behind the camera. Someone said, "Isn't that the guy who got kicked out of the Sovereign?" Someone else added loudly, "Heard his side chick left him too." Quincy tried to swing at the person filming, missed, and stumbled into the gutter. The video cut off with a loud chorus of disgusted groans. I watched it twice, the first time with a cold detachment, the second time with something like disbelief. "He's spiraling," Seku said. Publicly, I set the phone down. "And now?" "Now," Seku said calmly. "We let the fall continue." The next 48 hours were a free-fall for Quincy, and the city watched with morbid fascination. His face appeared on gossip blogs with captions like, "Fallen developer melts down in Midtown," and sighed, "Chick gone, banks won't answer a decline in real time." Investors ghosted him. His lawyer filed to withdraw representation. His accountant refused to work without payment. And then the bank froze his last credit line. He was officially financially dead. By the end of the second day, Quincy showed up again, at the mansion gate. This time he wasn't wearing a suit. He wasn't even wearing dignity. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair a mess, his face streaked with desperation. He yelled at the intercom, slamming the gate. "Zalika, open the damn gate, we need to talk." I watched him through the security camera feed from my office. He was sweating, shaking, pacing like a man drowning in his own consequences. Seku entered quietly. "He's losing it." "Yes," I said. "He is." "Do you want me to remove him?" I shook my head slowly. "No, let him scream." Quincy continued banging on the gate until his voice cracked. "Zalika, please, I have nothing left. I need you, please help me, I can't do this." I pressed the intercom button. My voice came out controlled, cold, steady. "Quincy." He froze. Yes, Zal, please. Go home," I said. "There's nothing for you here." "But, you made your choice," I said. "Live in it." He broke, collapsed to his knees, begging, crying. But I didn't open the gate. I didn't offer pity. I didn't soothe him. I simply turned off the feed and walked away. "That was the last mercy he'll ever receive from me," I said. "Good," Seku replied, "because the next phase is about to begin." I paused. "The next phase?" He nodded. "The one that ensures he never rises again." And for the first time since my father's letter, I felt the weight of the legacy truly settle in my bones. Not cruel, not petty, but undeniable. The storm had arrived, and I was its eye. For the next few days, Quincy disappeared from the public eye, but his absence echoed louder than his breakdown. Atlanta's elite circles were buzzing, trying to decide whether to pity him, mock him, or pretend they had never associated with him at all. And while they gossiped, I moved forward with precision. The Okafor Legacy Initiative was gaining traction, First in whispers, then in meetings, then in invitations from people who wouldn't have given me the time of day a month ago. I had become a name. Not because of what Quincy did to me, but because of who my father had made sure I would become. But transformation always draws shadows. On the fourth night after Quincy's meltdown, I returned to the mansion to find Sekou waiting in the foyer, arms crossed, jaw tight. That expression wasn't normal for him. "What happened?" I asked. "You need to see something," he said quietly. He handed me his phone. A document glowed on the screen, a police report. My breath caught as I skimmed it. Quincy, arrested again. Not for fraud this time, or unpaid debts. For trespassing. At the Sovereign, where he used to live. He had tried to break into the penthouse he once saw as a symbol of his power. He snapped, Sekou said. He tried to force the door open. Security tackled him. I stared at the report, emotionless. He's slipping faster. He's drowning, Sekou corrected. And drowning people grab whatever they can reach, even if it drags others down. Meaning? Meaning? Sekou said slowly. He might come for you again. I didn't flinch. He already tried. Not like before, Sekou said. This Quincy is desperate, and desperate men are unpredictable. I set the phone down. Then we make his next move pointless. How? By ending the game completely. The next morning, I put on a black pantsuit, sleek, sharp, unforgiving. The kind of outfit that told the world I wasn't here to negotiate. I stood before the mirror, tying my hair back, and realized something strange. I didn't recognize the woman staring back. Not because she was different, but because she finally looked like she belonged in her own skin. Sekou drove us downtown to a government building where we filed a formal corporate declaration. Okafor Legacy Holdings was expanding into development. Sustainable, ethical, community-focused development, everything Quincy lied about being. The man at the registrar looked impressed as he stamped the documents. "Congratulations, Miss Okafor," he said. "This puts your company on a national registry. You're operating at the same scale as major developers now." I nodded. "Good." When we walked outside, Sekou's phone buzzed. He checked it, then his eyebrow arched. "Interesting timing." "What happened?" I asked. "Quincy just filed for a business restructuring hearing." I almost laughed. "He thinks that will save him?" "No," Sekou said. "But it tells us he's still fighting. Which means it's time to push." He stepped closer. "Are you ready?" "I've been ready," I said softly. That afternoon, we returned to the mansion to review the final phase of the strategy. Sekou stood at the head of the table, flipping through charts. "The key to finishing this," he said, "is cutting off his last illusion of power, his reputation." "Already done," I replied. "Not entirely," Sekou said. He turned another page. "He still believes he can rebuild. That someone, some investor, some friend will save him. Then we show him nobody is coming." Exactly. For 2 hours, we worked through documents, timelines, and legal filings. Each step was precise, targeted, impossible to counter. When we finished, Sekou closed the folder and looked at me with an expression almost proud. "You understand what tomorrow means, don't you?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Tomorrow ends everything." "For him," Sekou added, "and begins everything for you." That evening, the mansion felt heavy, not with dread, but with anticipation. Like the night before a storm finally breaks. I walked out to the balcony overlooking the garden, leaning against the railing as the sky dimmed to a deep violet. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I checked it, unknown number. Again, I almost ignored it. Almost. But something made me answer this time. "Hello?" Silence. Then a shaky breath. "Zal." Quincy's voice was raw, ragged, almost unrecognizable. "Zal, please, can we talk?" "There is nothing left to say," I replied. "Please," he whispered. "Tomorrow. Tomorrow is the hearing. They're going to look at all my accounts, all my debts, everything. They'll see," his voice cracked. "They'll see the truth." "Yes," I said softly. "They will. I'll lose the company." "You already lost it." Silence. Then, brokenly, "What do you want from me?" I looked out over the land, my father's land, my legacy, and answered without hesitation. "Nothing." Quincy sucked in a breath. "Then why won't you stop?" "Because stopping would erase everything I've built," I said. "This isn't about you anymore. You're just the consequence." He let out a sob, a real one. "Zal, I loved you." "No," I said. "You didn't. You loved owning me." Silence. Then the line disconnected. I stood on the balcony a long time, listening to the cicadas hum beneath the warm Georgia night. I expected to feel triumphant, vindicated, powerful. Instead, I felt peaceful. Not because Quincy was falling, but because I no longer was. When I went back inside, Sekou was waiting in the hallway. "Everything all right?" he asked. I nodded. "Tomorrow," I said, "we finish it." He held my gaze for a moment longer than necessary. "I'll be by your side." And for the first time since everything began, I didn't feel alone. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my father's letter. I whispered, "Papa, the storm is almost over." Outside, thunder rumbled softly like a promise. Tomorrow, Quincy would face everything he created, and I would walk into the next chapter free. The morning of the hearing arrived with a heavy sky, gray and taut like a curtain waiting to be pulled back. I had slept only a few hours, not because of fear, but because my mind ran through every detail of what today meant. This wasn't about Quincy losing everything. That had already happened. Today was about closure, legal, emotional, psychological. The kind of closure a woman only earns after walking through fire and refusing to burn. I dressed in a deep navy suit, subtle but commanding, and tied my hair back. When I walked downstairs, the mansion staff paused to glance at me. Not out of curiosity, out of recognition. They felt the atmosphere too. Sekou waited near the foyer, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable but steady. "Ready?" he asked. "More than ready," I said. The drive to the courthouse was quiet. Atlanta bustled as usual, cars jammed on Peachtree, food trucks setting up on corners, joggers weaving through sidewalks, but inside the car, the air was different, focused, sharp. A woman remaking her life sits differently than a woman surviving it. When we pulled up to the courthouse, news vans were already parked along the curb. Reporters mulled around, waiting for something, anything that hinted at Quincy's implosion. Sekou stepped out first, scanning the area. Then I followed. Heads snapped in our direction immediately. Cameras rose. Someone whispered my name like it was a rumor they weren't sure they should believe. "Miss Okafor, are you connected to the allegations against Quincy? Are you financing the initiative in South Georgia? Is it true you were thrown out of your penthouse last month?" Sekou cut in calmly. No comment. His presence alone made cameras hesitate. We walked toward the courthouse steps, and just as we reached the door, a figure stumbled out from a black sedan parked nearby. Quincy, or what was left of him. His suit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, his eyes bloodshot. He looked smaller, as if life had shrunk him to match the size of his integrity. He froze when he saw me. "Zal." He whispered my name like a question, a plea, a wound. I didn't react. I didn't slow down. But he staggered forward, blocking my path. "Please," he said, voice trembling. "They're going to tear me apart in there." "That's what accountability feels like," I replied. "It's overdue." He reached for my arm, hesitant, afraid. Sekou stepped between us instantly, his voice low, lethal. "Don't touch her." Quincy flinched. His hand dropped. For a moment, he looked around the cameras, the courthouse, the crowd like a man waking up inside a nightmare, made of his own choices. "Zalika," he said again, voice cracking. "I know I hurt you. I know I destroyed everything. But I'm begging you, don't let them kill what's left of me." I stared at him, really stared, at his desperation, his fear, his collapse, and I felt nothing. No pity, no satisfaction, just clarity. "Whatever is happening to you now," I said quietly, "is the life you built when you thought you'd never face consequences." His eyes glistened. "Please, just talk to the judge for me." "No," I said, "not now, not ever," and I walked inside. The courtroom was cold and too bright, filled with the dry smell of paper and old wood. Quincy sat at the defendant's table with a public attorney, shoulders hunched, hands shaking. Sekou sat beside me, calm, steady, grounding. The judge entered. Proceedings began. Quincy's financial records were reviewed line by line: fraud, debt stacking, fake invoices, unpaid suppliers, tax discrepancies. Every secret he hid for years spilled into the air. He kept glancing back at me, like I was the lifeline he once took for granted. But I didn't give him a single look. I'd given him 10 years already. The judge finally turned toward me. "Miss Okafor," he said, "as the creditor who legally acquired Mr. Quincy's outstanding debts, do you have any statement?" The room fell silent. Even Quincy stopped breathing. I stood slowly, every eye fixed on me, my heartbeat steady, my voice clear. "Your Honor," I began, "I am not here for revenge." A ripple moved through the courtroom: surprise, curiosity. Quincy looked hopeful for a fraction of a second. I am here because accountability matters, I continued. To the workers he underpaid, to the suppliers he stole from, to the communities he endangered with unsafe construction. To every person he used to build an image that was never real. Quincy's hope died instantly. For 10 years, I said, I lived in the shadow of his ambition. Today, I stand in the truth of his actions. I paused. The silence was heavy. I request the court proceed with full liquidation of his company assets to satisfy the debts. No leniency, no concessions. Quincy made a choking sound, almost like he'd been struck. The judge nodded. So ordered. Quincy's attorney whispered urgently, but Quincy sat frozen eyes, hollow, mouth trembling, chest rising too fast. When the gavel struck, it sounded like the closing of a chapter. After the hearing, Quincy stood in the hallway alone. The crowd moved around him like he didn't exist. He swallowed, then approached me slowly, cautiously, like someone approaching a ghost. You really did it, he whispered. I turned to him. No, Quincy, you did it. He blinked, tears forming. I just wanted to feel powerful. Power built on pain isn't power, I said. It's rot. A tear fell from his eye. What am I supposed to do now? Whatever you choose, I said, turning away, but without me. He reached for me again reflexively, but stopped himself mid-air. I walked away first this time, and for the first time, he didn't follow. Outside, the sky had cleared. Sunlight spilled across the city like a blessing, warm and bright. Sekou stood beside me, hands in his pockets. How do you feel? He asked. I exhaled. Light. He nodded. It's almost over. No, I said, looking up at the sky. It's just beginning. The months that followed unfolded not like a victory parade, but like the slow construction of a new world. Quiet, intentional, unshakable. I never celebrated Quincy's downfall. There were no champagne toasts, no triumphant speeches, just work, plans, foundations, and a growing understanding that my life was now something my past could no longer threaten. Every morning, I walked through the pecan groves my father once touched, a sea of green, stretching beyond the horizon. For years, I had never even known this land existed. Now, it breathed because of me. Workers waved when I passed, calling me Miss Zalika, not with fear, but with gratitude. Children ran through the dirt pathways between the young saplings. Families who once lived in cramped, unstable apartments now lived in the homes my company built on the first 250 acres. Homes with clean water, with playgrounds, with porches where grandmothers could sit and shell pecans at sunset. I used to believe justice was the fall of the person who wronged you. But standing in those fields, hearing laughter instead of tears, I realized justice was creation, restoration, the rebuilding of what someone tried to break. The Aquaphor Center had become the pride of the region, a place where farmers learned sustainable practices, where young Black entrepreneurs studied business, where people like my father, quiet, hardworking, overlooked, were finally given tools the world never offered them. During the opening ceremony, elders placed their hands on my shoulders, praying blessings over the land, over me. I didn't cry then, but later, when the sun dipped behind the hills and I stood there alone, a single tear fell. Not from pain, but from understanding. My father hadn't left me wealth, he had left me purpose. One afternoon, while reviewing site plans in my office, my assistant knocked. Miss Zalika, someone is asking to see you, says it's important. My heart tightened for a second. I expected a supplier or a farmer. Instead, when the door opened, my mother stepped in, walking slowly, carefully, but stronger than when I last saw her. I rose instantly. Mama. She smiled softly, her eyes sharp as always. You think I would let my child build a kingdom and not come see it with my own eyes? She looked around the office, the high ceilings, the maps, the drone shots of the land, and nodded. Your father would be proud. That single sentence made my chest tighten. Mama, I whispered. I didn't even know he left all this. I didn't understand why he never told me. She moved toward the window overlooking the groves. Because he knew you, she said. Knew your heart. If he told you, you would have tried to share it with the wrong people. He wanted you to discover your strength, not borrow his. I closed my eyes, absorbing her words like medicine. Later that evening, after dinner at the farmhouse, I walked Mama to the guest room. She held my face with both hands. You did not lose a marriage, she said. You lost a weight, and you gained a life. When she slept, I stood in the hallway for a long time, letting those words root inside me. The next day, my phone buzzed. Sekou, you have a visitor at the main gate, he said. Someone unexpected. I headed to the entrance. A storm had rolled in. The sky was heavy and bruised. When I reached the gate, I froze. Quincy stood outside, not in a suit, not with arrogance, just a worn-out jacket, hair slicked by rain, shoulders hunched. Not a man arriving to reclaim something. A man arriving to return what he lost: his pride. He didn't look through the bars. He looked down at the muddy ground, as if even meeting my eyes felt like a privilege he hadn't earned. "Zalika?" he said quietly when I approached. "I'm not here to ask for anything." His voice was raspy, tired. "I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry." Thunder rumbled behind us as if the sky itself was listening. "I ruined everything I touched," he continued. You were the only good thing I ever had, and I didn't realize it until everything else fell apart. I didn't speak." He swallowed hard. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just needed to say it out loud, to the one person I hurt most." For the first time, I saw him not as the man who betrayed me, but as the man who destroyed himself while trying to climb a ladder made of lies. "Quincy," I said softly, "I don't hate you." His head lifted slightly, surprised. "But the woman who needed your apology," I continued, "is gone. I buried her the day you locked me out of my home." His lips trembled, but he nodded, accepting it, perhaps for the first time. "Thank you," he whispered before stepping away from the gate. He didn't ask to come in. He didn't ask for a second chance. He just walked back into the rain, becoming smaller and smaller until he disappeared entirely. I exhaled slowly, not in pain, in release. That night, the storm cleared, revealing a sky full of stars bright and sharp against the darkness. I walked to the highest ridge overlooking the pecan fields. The wind was cool. The air smelled of rain and soil. Footsteps approached behind me, steady, familiar. "You okay?" Sekou asked. "Yes," I said. "I think I am." He stood beside me, the breeze tugging at his shirt. "Closure looks good on you," he murmured. I smiled faintly. "So does freedom." He turned to me then, not with urgency, not with expectation, but with understanding. "You know," he said quietly, "I didn't stay because the work wasn't done. I stayed because you weren't." My heart paused, not out of fear, out of recognition. The kind of recognition that comes when two storms meet and decide to rest instead of rage. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Instead, I let my hand find his slow, deliberate. His fingers closed around mine with a warmth steady enough to melt years of coldness. We stood like that, watching the land my father left me, the land I rebuilt, the land that now pulsed with life, a kingdom resurrected from betrayal, a legacy reborn from ashes. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the sound of laughter from the village below. My village, my people, my future. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt whole.